Stephen Hawking was born on January 8, 1942, in Oxford, England, exactly 300 years after the death of the famous astronomer Galileo Galilei. This coincidence felt meaningful to many people later in his life, considering the impact Stephen would have on the world of science. His full name was Stephen William Hawking. From the beginning, his life was a bit unusual. His parents, Frank and Isabel Hawking, were highly intelligent and academic. Frank was a medical researcher, and Isabel had studied philosophy, politics, and economics at Oxford University, something quite rare for women at that time. Despite their brilliant minds, the family lived modestly. Their home was often described as cluttered, chaotic, and full of books. They didn't care much about appearances or luxury. They spent their money on education and learning. Dinner-time conversations weren't about sports or gossip, they were about the universe, mathematics, and science. Stephen and his siblings were encouraged to think deeply, ask questions, and never stop learning. As a child, Stephen was curious and observant. He enjoyed taking apart clocks, radios, and other devices to see how they worked. But interestingly, he was not considered a top student at school. In fact, many of his teachers thought he was just an average pupil. He didn't care much for memorizing facts or following rules. However, those who looked closely could see something special. His mind worked in a different way. He was more interested in understanding how things worked than simply getting good grades. Stephen's education began at Byron House School, but he quickly moved to St. Albans School when his family relocated. There, he became more serious about his studies. He loved mathematics and physics. But at the time, there was no way to study mathematics alone at Oxford University, his dream school. So when he applied to Oxford at the age of 17, he chose to study physics instead. Even then, he was younger than most of the other students. Life at Oxford was a turning point. At first, he found the environment lonely and difficult. He missed his family and didn't feel challenged by the courses. But over time, things changed. He made friends, joined the rowing team as a coxswain, and began to enjoy his life. His professors noticed that he could solve problems with incredible speed and accuracy, often without showing much work. His mind was sharp, and he was beginning to shine. After completing his undergraduate studies at Oxford, Hawking moved on to Cambridge University to do research in cosmology, the study of the universe as a whole. It was a big step for him, and one that would shape the rest of his life. At Cambridge, he met his PhD advisor, Dennis Sciama, who helped guide him into the world of theoretical physics and the mysteries of the cosmos. But during this time, something frightening began to happen. Stephen started to notice that he was becoming clumsier. He fell more often. He had trouble tying his shoelaces. Eventually, he went to see a doctor, and everything changed. That moment would mark the end of his normal, early life. But it would also mark the beginning of one of the most inspiring journeys in modern history, a journey that would continue in the face of extreme difficulty, defy expectations, and forever change the way we think about space, time, and the universe. At the age of 21, Stephen Hawking's life took a sudden and dramatic turn. He was a graduate student at the University of Cambridge, studying theoretical physics and cosmology. He had just begun to explore the vast mysteries of the universe when he began to experience unusual symptoms, occasional clumsiness, trouble with balance, and difficulty speaking. What initially seemed like minor issues quickly escalated. Concerned, Stephen visited doctors, who eventually delivered devastating news. He had amyotrophic lateral sclerosis, or ALS, a rare neurological disease that gradually paralyzes the body while the mind remains unaffected. The doctors gave him a grim prognosis. They told him he had only 2 or 3 years to live. Imagine hearing that at 21. A young man, full of curiosity and potential, being told that his time was running out. For a while, Stephen fell into a deep depression. He withdrew from his studies, avoided social situations, and felt hopeless. His dreams of becoming a scientist, of discovering the laws that govern the universe, seemed out of reach. But something remarkable happened. It was during this dark time that Stephen met Jane Wilde, a friend of his sister. Jane was kind, warm, and full of life. She believed in him. Their relationship gave Stephen a renewed sense of purpose. Slowly, he began to push through the despair and focus once again on his work. Even as his physical abilities declined, his mind remained razor-sharp. He began using a cane, and later a wheelchair, but he refused to let ALS define him. In fact, the looming threat of a shorter life pushed him to work even harder. He once said, "When one's expectations are reduced to zero, one really appreciates everything one does have." Stephen's professors noticed his brilliance. Despite his condition, he was making progress in some of the most complex areas of physics. His doctoral thesis explored singularities, points in space where the laws of physics break down, like at the center of a black hole or the beginning of the universe. Against all odds, Stephen earned his PhD and went on to become a research fellow at Gonville and Caius College in Cambridge. As the disease progressed, he began using a wheelchair full-time, and his speech became harder to understand. Eventually, after a bout of pneumonia in 1985, he lost the ability to speak entirely. Most people would have given up, but not Stephen Hawking. Instead, he began using a speech-generating device, controlled initially by his hand, and later by movements in his cheek. With this system, he could type words that would be read aloud by a computerized voice, a voice that would become iconic around the world. Through sheer willpower and the support of those around him, Stephen adapted. The diagnosis that once seemed like the end of his life became the beginning of an extraordinary journey. His illness limited his body, but it set his mind free, to explore the cosmos, to challenge the limits of science, and to inspire millions. His life became a powerful message, that even in the face of suffering, purpose and passion can endure. That limitations are real, but so is determination. And that the human mind, even when trapped in a failing body, can still reach the stars. Stephen Hawking's name became known around the world not just because of his resilience, but because of the revolutionary scientific ideas he introduced. Despite being confined to a wheelchair and later losing his ability to speak, Hawking's mind remained limitless. One of his most important contributions to science was his work on black holes. Before Hawking, black holes were seen as mysterious objects that simply swallowed everything around them, even light. But Hawking took this idea further. In 1974, he shocked the scientific community by proposing that black holes aren't completely black. According to what is now known as Hawking radiation, black holes actually emit tiny amounts of thermal radiation due to quantum effects near the event horizon. Over time, this means black holes could actually evaporate and disappear. This was a groundbreaking theory. It combined principles from both quantum mechanics and general relativity, two areas of physics that don't often agree with each other. And yet, Hawking found a bridge between them. At the time, many physicists found this idea controversial. But over time, more and more evidence suggested Hawking might be right. His theory changed how scientists viewed black holes and the nature of the universe itself. What's fascinating is that Hawking couldn't write equations or chalk up formulas on a board anymore. He had to do everything in his head, thinking in patterns, visuals, and mathematical logic. He described it as seeing equations in space. But black holes weren't the only focus of his genius. Stephen Hawking also worked on the Big Bang theory, the idea that the universe began as a single point and expanded into everything we know today. He believed that the laws of physics could explain how the universe began, without needing a supernatural creator. Working with James Hartle, he proposed a theory called the no-boundary proposal, which suggested that time and space could be finite but have no boundaries, kind of like the surface of a sphere. It's hard to imagine, but Hawking believed that this meant the universe could have simply popped into existence from nothing, governed entirely by the laws of physics. These theories made him a legend in the world of science. But they also made him a public figure. People were fascinated by the fact that someone facing such physical hardship could still make such immense contributions. His voice, delivered by his speech-generating computer, became iconic, and his mind became a symbol of hope, curiosity, and brilliance. What's even more amazing is how Hawking could explain complex ideas in simple language. His 1988 book, A Brief History of Time, brought these difficult concepts to the public in a way that was both inspiring and understandable. The book sold millions of copies and was translated into dozens of languages. Suddenly, people who had never studied physics were talking about black holes, time travel, and the nature of the universe, all because of Hawking. He didn't just want to explore the universe himself, he wanted all of us to join him on that journey. Stephen Hawking's contributions to science were nothing short of revolutionary. Despite being diagnosed with ALS at the age of 21 and given only a few years to live, he not only survived but transformed our understanding of the universe. One of his most groundbreaking achievements came in the 1970s, when he proposed the concept of what is now known as Hawking radiation. Until that time, black holes were thought to be massive cosmic traps, regions in space where gravity was so strong that not even light could escape. But Hawking challenged this idea. Using quantum mechanics, he theorized that black holes could emit particles and eventually evaporate over time. This idea stunned the scientific community. For the first time, someone had successfully merged Einstein's theory of relativity with quantum physics, two areas that previously seemed incompatible. His theory suggested that black holes are not eternal and introduced a completely new way of thinking about the life cycle of these mysterious cosmic objects. But that wasn't his only contribution. In collaboration with mathematician Roger Penrose, Hawking worked on singularity theorems. Their research showed that if general relativity is correct, then the universe must have begun from a singularity, a single point of infinite density and energy. This provided strong theoretical backing for the Big Bang theory, which explains the origin of the universe. In short, Hawking helped shape our modern view of how the universe began. He also authored many scientific papers and books, including the famous A Brief History of Time. This book, released in 1988, brought complex concepts like space, time, black holes, and the Big Bang to a general audience. It became a bestseller and was translated into dozens of languages, selling more than 25 million copies worldwide. What made this book so powerful was that it allowed ordinary people to connect with deep questions about the universe, even if they didn't have a background in science. Stephen Hawking didn't just contribute theories, he also asked important philosophical questions. He wondered whether time itself had a beginning and whether the universe required a creator or could exist on its own. His work touched on the nature of reality, our place in the cosmos, and what it means to be human. Even as his disease progressed and he lost almost all physical movement, Hawking continued to push boundaries. He gave lectures using a voice synthesizer, taught students, and participated in debates about artificial intelligence, extraterrestrial life, and the fate of the universe. He never let his physical condition limit his mental freedom. In the world of theoretical physics, Stephen Hawking is seen as one of the greatest minds of our time. His scientific legacy lives on in classrooms, observatories, and laboratories around the world. His ideas continue to inspire young scientists, philosophers, and dreamers alike. Stephen Hawking passed away on March 14, 2018, exactly 139 years after the birth of Albert Einstein. He died peacefully at his home in Cambridge, at the age of 76. But though his physical body was gone, his legacy remains immortal. He had lived more than 50 years with ALS, a disease that typically takes lives in just a few short years. Yet in that time, he became a father, a husband, a world-famous physicist, and a best-selling author. He traveled the world giving lectures, collaborated with brilliant minds, and even appeared on pop culture TV shows like The Simpsons, Futurama, and The Big Bang Theory, all while speaking through a computerized voice. In the final years of his life, Hawking became a kind of symbol, not just for science, but for resilience. He showed the world what it means to keep pushing, even when your body says stop. When asked about his illness, he once said, "My advice to other disabled people would be, concentrate on things your disability doesn't prevent you doing well, and don't regret the things it interferes with. Don't be disabled in spirit as well as physically." His work wasn't just about black holes and time warps, it was about hope. About reminding us that no matter how dark the universe might seem, there's always light, always curiosity, always something more to understand. One of the most powerful moments came when his voice was broadcast into space after his death, a symbolic gesture from Earth to the stars. A message of peace, hope, and eternal wonder. Stephen Hawking was more than a physicist. He was a fighter, a teacher, a dreamer, and a reminder that no matter the odds, the human mind has the power to break through barriers, even those of time and space. His final words in his book Brief Answers to the Big Questions were, "There is no God. No one directs the universe. But we have this one life to appreciate the grand design of the universe, and for that, I am extremely grateful." So maybe that's the lesson he left behind. Look up. Be curious. And never, ever give up.